This podcast is rated E for explicit and by category of true crime contains language and descriptions of crimes not suitable for young or sensitive listeners. This week, we hear from family. Marcie's niece Courtney tells us what the case means to her. We'll update our relationship with the sheriff's department and give special insight from another member of Marcie's family. You're listening to Who Killed Marcie Part 3, Common Goals, and this is the Cold Case Chronicles.
I know your secret, I know the truth, I know your secrets and I'm telling on you.
The day after our last episode, Monday, September 14th, I received a phone call from Detective Steiner of the Vigo County Sheriff's Department. Suffice it to say, he was less than happy in our episode as it pertained to the department. It's important to note that typically we record as we investigate, and sometimes we can give information that is found out later to be incorrect. We will always update the information as it becomes available. But as it pertains to individual experiences, just like testimony, it's their story to tell. And after an email exchange with the department, we were put in contact with Vigo County Chief of Operations Detective Fell. Detective Fell was kind and easy to talk to, and we learned that the emails went unanswered because the email links on the department webpage are incorrect. He assured me the department page was being updated. While he could not answer any specific questions about Marcie's case because he was simply not familiar with the details, he did commit to review the list of questions I had sent and would have Detective Steiner respond to the questions they felt would not jeopardize future prosecution. We look forward to hearing from them soon. He also explained that cold cases in the department were divided amongst the detectives for work when their current caseloads allow. He also explained they had future plans to work on cold cases in teams to see better result, and that is why the family was told it would be a while before they could work on the case, as a team. Amy had an interview with Courtney, Marcie's niece. She describes what it means to see this case solved.
My name is Courtney Lash. I am Marcie's niece. My mother was Marcie's sister, Jan. Marcie's death really affected our family in more ways than you can even imagine. It was kind of like just as after she was killed, it was like a black cloud hovered over our family, especially my mom's generation, her siblings, my grandma. It just really affected them in ways that could never really dig out of the hole that it put them in, and not for lack of trying.
Right.
Growing up, my mom and my aunts, we were all of the cousins were very close. I was close with Shauna and Justin and Jessica, who were being raised, Marcie's children, who were being raised by my grandma. And then my other cousins, we were all close and kind of grew up together. It was kind of odd. There were times when, especially my mom was extremely overprotective. She would not let me walk behind her in the grocery store because she didn't know who was out there and what was going to happen.
Right. Understandably.
There were times when we were very overprotected, and other times when I think my mom, who dealt with some depression, was very despondent. There were other times I can remember being at the park all day long with my cousins, and it was okay, so it was odd. But it was because, I think, they were overprotective in public, but then they'd let us go to the park. So it didn't make a lot of sense, but it also made complete sense. I don't know. It just,
right.
it seemed weird, and they came and checked on us and stuff, but the park was a block away from my grandma's house, so they felt safe there. But then once you got out of that little bubble, it was like, my mom taught me to always look under my car, in the back seat of my car, all around my car before I ever got in. to carry my to carry my keys between my fingers in case anybody ever tried to attack me. From an early age, even just going from the house out to the car, it was be aware of your surroundings. And I think all of my cousins were the same way.
How old were you whenever Marcie was killed?
I was 3 when my Aunt Marcie was killed. Sadly, those, and I think people think that, oh, it's crazy. You don't remember things from when you were 3. But when it's something traumatic, then you remember. And I have one memory of my Aunt Marcie when she was alive. And I just remember her being at my grandma's stove fixing dinner. And it was like she was fixing dinner for everyone. And we had a pretty large family. And I remember looking at her and thinking how beautiful she was. You know, to me, that's my memory of having this aunt that was tall and thin with this gorgeous strawberry blonde hair and just being gorgeous.
Aww.
So that's kind of something that I treasure. But, and I mean, it's so funny. She was probably making like Brussels sprouts or something
Right.
like horrible. But I remember, you know, that's my one memory of her. But then after, I just remember, it's like I remember my entire family when she was missing being at my grandma's house. Everybody was trying to figure out where she was. The only time I ever remember seeing my parents, who were going through a divorce, being affectionate with each other was when we found out Marcie was gone and my dad hugged my mom. That's kind of bittersweet, but that's one of the things that goes with it. So, you know, it is what it is. But even like the relationship that I had with my grandma and the relationship that my other cousins, not Marcie's children, well, even Marcie's children, the relationship that my grandmother's grandchildren had with her was not the same that I think that it would have been had this not happened. Because instead of being able to be a grandma, she now had to step in and be a mom for her grandchildren.
Oh, yeah.
And so that took away from those of us whose parents were still alive because she was focused on Marcie's kids. And now she couldn't be a grandma to Marcie's kids. She had to be the disciplinarian. And she had to make sure that they were doing what they should be doing. So it put a strain on our relationship with our grandma.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of us more so than others. Like I have one cousin who was very attached to my grandma. One of my Aunt Penny's daughters was very attached to my grandma and seemed to have a much closer relationship with grandma than I did. But it was because she tried. And I guess as a little kid, you know, it was like, for me, it was like, well, grandma's got other things to do.
Right.
Or she's going to have to, you know, I better toe the line because I know that if I get out of line, she's going to, you know, and so that's another way that the murder affected us and had a ripple effect was we all had a relationship that was a lot different.
Yeah, everything just changed.
Yeah. And I even saw with my younger siblings, because my next younger sister was 6 years younger than me, the relationship that she had, well, that my younger siblings had with my grandma was much different than the relationship that myself and the cousins that were my age had with her. Because at the time, you know, when we were young and we were little, she had just lost her daughter.
Right.
And had just taken on her 3 young children. So it was rough. Makes me a little sad.
One question that has come up a couple times, when Marcie was going through the divorce, what caused them to get separated and go through the divorce?
What I have been told, and I don't know if this is true, I have been told that her husband was dealing drugs, and she was afraid that if she stayed with him, her children were going to be taken away if something happened, and she wasn't willing to risk that.
Now, did he know at that time that the twins weren't his?
That I don't know. I would assume so, but I don't know.
I just thought it was strange also that he only took Brandon.
Yeah, he must have known because I can't imagine that he wouldn't have taken the twins as well. And the picture of all of them, the twins looked a lot like Brandon when they were young. I feel like they all kind of had the same eyes, you know. I can't imagine that it was like, oh, they don't look like me, so they must not be mine, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Had to figure it out somehow, so.
Yeah, because back then, you know, it wasn't as simple as just doing a 23andMe. type thing.
Right.
So it's almost like she had to know and just told him, not like in the soap operas either, where they instantly get into a car accident and they need blood kind of thing.
Right.
It's almost like she had to have known and had to tell him.
In my mind, during a divorce, it may have been one of those things where she was like, oh, well, guess what?
Yeah. By the way, they're not yours. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm guessing that he knew that they were not.
I think that's probably the way it went down too, because he would have fought for them, or at least basically been given custody at that point, because they would have gone to their dad. That's just the way it would have been.
And he fought for, I say fought, as far as I knew, he fought for Brandon. So, I can't imagine having gone through, risking a lot to get Brandon by just taking him. I can't imagine that if he knew that the twins, or if he had any inkling that maybe the twins were his, that he wouldn't have done the same for them.
Right.
That's one thing. Clearly he loved Brandon with everything he had, because he took him, from what I understand. So, he risked a lot, I would think.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I can't imagine that he wouldn't have done the same, or had he thought the twins were his as well.
You sent me the pictures of where her body was located, and it wasn't exactly the spot where it's listed, like in the paper and in all these articles where it says, it's this spot and this spot. It's a little bit off. It's almost like someone had to drag her to that point. Like, it's not right there on the road. Is that my understanding? Is that correct?
Yeah. So I've not seen a police report to know exactly, but from what I understand through family members who have been there, and then having gone on Google Maps and looking at the street view, yeah, it's almost, they would have had to have turned off of that highway and then turned onto the side road. They would have had to have, yes, dragged her, for lack of a better,
right.
If she was already deceased.
Mm-hmm.
The way it looked on Google Maps was almost like there would have been not like an embankment, and then it was like a clearing, but it's very wooded up by the road.
Right. Because I can't imagine that she would have been alive at that point, because she would have been fighting. That would have been a pretty long way off the road for her to be fighting that entire time.
Right. I'm going to say, which I've not been out there, just from pictures I've seen and what family members have told me, 15 to 20 yards off of the road.
Right.
Which that's, dead weight, that's still kind of rough.
That's a lot. How big of a person was this handyman guy that lived around there, the one that found the car?
Under 6 foot.
Mm-hmm.
Probably, I'm guessing, like 5'11" at best.
Mm-hmm.
And under 200 pounds.
Okay.
Probably 180, 170. Guessing. And I've not seen him in years, but probably around that time,
Yeah.
Not a big guy at all.
And do you know if he knew that she was going to the store that day?
I don't understand how he would have any way of knowing, unless he had been hanging around my grandma's house that day. And the only way I would know that now, my mom is gone and my grandma's gone.
Right.
And they were the only ones that were there at that time that could tell me.
That's what's unfortunate about these cold cases, is people are dying. The people that are the witnesses, the people that need to be talked to, it's not going to get any better the longer that they wait.
Exactly. And the thing about it is, her children, they've pretty much resolved that, he's gotten away with it. Whoever it was has gotten away with it for this long. That person has had a chance to live their life. But there's still something in me that says, if I can do anything about it, the rest of the life that that person is living should not be pleasant, regardless
right.
of how long he has gotten away with it.
Absolutely.
Even if that person hears the podcast and like pees himself a little, that's what I pray for every night. Like every Sunday before the podcast airs, I'm like, oh, pray that that person hears it and it just makes his stomach go up into his throat a little bit, and I hope he pees himself a little bit.
Yeah.
If nothing else.
The thing is, he has to have lived his entire life looking behind his back just as much as you guys have lived your lives looking under your car and looking in the back seat. I mean, he has to know that he's only one step ahead of law enforcement or investigators of any kind because he's always on the run, no matter what, even if it doesn't seem like the police are doing anything or whatever, he's still always on the run because he's never just going to be cleared from it. You have to think, there's a little bit of justification in knowing that he's never going to just be living this quiet, mundane life because there is this little bit of him that knows that someone is always going to be looking for him.
Yep. And it's going to be me.
Yes.
And it's going to, and the other thing about it is I'm a faithful person and God knows. And I would hate to be in his shoes when he arrives at the gates. We all have things to answer for, but I think what he has to answer for is at the top of the no-no list.
Absolutely. And I believe the same way. And I think that, he will pay for it much worse once he's dead than he'd pay for it on earth anyway. But I would really like for him to see justice on earth and in hell,
Mm-hmm. Well, but at the end of the day, what kind of gives me a little bit of a smile is despite what he's tried to do to our family, he may have knocked us down, but all of her children, all of her nieces and nephews, for the most part, have gotten up and made their lives so much better than he could imagine. We're all relatively well-adjusted and successful.
And just the most beautiful people. I've talked to so many people in your family. Honestly, I haven't met anyone that hasn't been so nice and so supportive in us trying to help with this case. And everyone is just so genuine and so nice. I am just blown away at everyone because I've probably talked to 7, 8 people in your family and they're all so super nice. And I love them. They're just the best.
Well,
and so you're exactly right. Like he may have knocked everybody down for a little bit, but everyone seemed to have got up with a vengeance and they're great people.
Yeah. We always had a joke. My grandma's name was Dorothy. And I don't know who even came up with this, but my mom always used to tell us when we were growing up, especially the girls, you can't let anybody get you down. You can't let anybody get one over on you. You're Dorothy's girls. So
Aww.
My cousins and I, we kind of say that to each other sometimes, like, whatever, no one's going to mess with us. We're Dorothy's girls.
Aww. It's a great ending to something that started so awful. There's things in life that we don't understand why they happen. We certainly want to ask questions and we want to ask why, and there's really no good answer for it. But in the end, we have to find something good out of all the bad things in order to survive and cope with those things. And I think everyone in your family somehow managed to do that, which I think is an amazing show of strength out of everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
One way or the other, we're going to figure out what they're hiding, what they're not hiding, more or less. And we're going to make whoever did this sweat a little bit, one way or the other.
And we thank you because we have felt like, and I know even when I was young, my mom felt like, my aunts have felt like, my uncle felt like, my aunt was just kind of reduced to a file folder, collecting dust. My mom tried to make it her mission, and I'm trying to make it mine, that nobody forgets her name, that she's not just, she's someone's mom, she's someone's aunt, she's someone's sister, she was someone's daughter.
Right.
She's not just a file folder to be setting someplace and forgotten about.
Absolutely.
She was a person.
Absolutely. And that's exactly why we do this. It's like, we do this just for that reason, because these are people that don't make it to Dateline and don't make it to the TV shows. They're not the cases that everybody hears about, but they're just as important as everyone else. People need to remember them, and people need to know their name. And these are the small cases, but they're big people. That's why one case at a time, we're trying to get the word out that these people still exist and they still matter.
Wow. And we're so thankful for you guys because of that, because you are putting her name out there and bringing attention back to something that everybody in our area had kind of just forgotten about. I've heard, and now I'm not a professional, I'm just a stinky old teacher, but I've
God
heard
bless you for that.
Yeah. Ooh, it's been a day. It's homecoming week, so we're having fun this week. But
yeah,
I've heard that if someone kills someone once, the likelihood of them doing it again is pretty good.
Absolutely.
Especially if they've gotten away with it. I mean,
right.
Come on. Who's to say it hasn't happened to someone else?
Right.
So if someone hears this and it's like, oh my gosh, this is eerily similar.
Mm-hmm.
Or, then who's to say that might not help solve another case as well? Yeah. And that's something that, could be a silver lining.
Well, and that's why I question about the DNA, because if they do have anything that could be ran again, possibly that could solve more than just her case.
Exactly.
I mean, I know it costs money. It costs like $5,000 for them to run just one piece of DNA evidence. But in the long run, maybe you're solving more than one case if you do it.
And gosh, you're getting a bunch of ticked off people off your back.
Right.
I mean, gee, if I had that, it was like, I don't feel like teaching these kids today.
Oh,
Let's just let them run amok and pray that they pass a test. Like, if my success rate wasn't great, I would be without a job.
Right. Or give us the option, give us the option to raise the money and do it ourselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then we could try and raise the money to get the DNA sent off. And, that would be perfectly fine. If that's an option, give it to us and we'll try and raise the money.
By gosh, people just can't get away with murder. They shouldn't. I mean, from what I understand, it was not, she was not killed in a humane manner. How does that make people feel that someone like that is just out there?
Mm-hmm.
That's scary to me.
We also received a Facebook message last week. It was Brandon, Marcie's youngest son, and as shocked as I was to see it, I was grateful. Brandon and I had a subsequent telephone call. He was kind and thoughtful. He had listened to earlier episodes, and he wanted to clear up a few things. First and foremost, that he was thankful for his father and convinced he had nothing to do with Marcie's murder. We had a chat about some of the other suspects, and he understands why his father is a suspect. But he believes his father had an alibi, was given and passed a polygraph test, and then cleared in the investigation. While we haven't been able to validate that information, Brandon seems certain of it. Secondly, the story that he was raised not knowing who his mother was is simply incorrect. He said he's always known that his mom, at the moment, may have been his adoptive stepmom, but he always knew of Marcie and of her family. He was too young to have any memory of Marcie, but somehow he just knew. He thinks the misunderstanding occurred sometime when he was very young and referred to the only mother he knew as his mom. The family took it to mean that he didn't know. Lastly, he would like to see the case solved and an arrest made as much as anyone else. As with any story, there are different sides. And as we all know, the truth lies somewhere in the middle. But I offer this. Sides are irrelevant when we have the same common goal. We all want closure for Marcie. Well, except for the person responsible. Be sure to follow along on social media, Cold Case Chronicles on Facebook and Instagram, and at Cold Case Crew on Twitter. And as always,
have the day you deserve.
Especially if, well, you know what you did.
I know your secrets and I'm telling on you.